I do support Measure H, and everybody I talk to in the ward, I'm telling them we got to have this if we're going to do the things we want to do. So, you know, if it passes, I would support. I'll step back. No one I've talked with has said let's reduce funding for emergency services. So obviously, we're going to maintain emergency services at least at the level we have right now. I would expand Uplift. You know, I think Uplift is doing good things with the community, with the homeless community, and I think we should expand that program. Roads are a perpetually common concern of people, and I would want to make sure that we use those funds to start repairing our roads. Our infrastructure is in bad shape. Looking at how we could leverage funding from Measure H to pay for more trails, you know, trails up Cooper Gulch and trails up through Zane. I would also look at, you know, we have to look at CalPERS, you know, and we have to pay down debt when it comes to CalPERS. Those are issues, or that is a contract we made with our employees, our city employees, and we have to fund that program. And if we can pay down debt and reduce our long-term burden, then we should do that. So that's what I would do there. If it fails, I would look at across-the-board cuts. You know, we're talking, you know, the most equitable thing to do is, you know, whatever our funding needs are, or our lack of funding is, 10 to 20% would go to, or 10 or 20% cuts would have to be across the board. Everybody feels the pain. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. But it's not going to fail. It's going to pass. One of the bigger issues that I hear about from people in the ward, you know, the homeless issue. Man, we had a long discussion last night with a bunch of people in my neighborhood. You know, we have rangers now. We have at least one. We have a ranger who goes around and, you know, basically patrols trails. I'd like to see more of that, more patrol from our rangers. I'm not saying uniformed police officers. I'm saying people that are out making people feel safe. Also, that's a big thing I want to see happen. And I think we're doing a good job. At least I use the Bay Trail all the time, you know, for exercise. And I don't see the trash issue. I don't see a lot of the issues that I think people talk about a lot. I feel like it's gotten a lot better. But yeah, we can always do better. I do support a needle exchange program. I think it needs to be a 1-for-1. And most people in the ward that I talk with are also in favor of a 1-for-1 needle exchange. You know, it saves lives, and it's good for community health. It really is important. I also, as far as alternative housing, I'm for anything that gets people housed and gets them off the streets. You know, I know we talk about safe camping, you know, all these different opportunities. You know, we need more low-income housing. Maybe we do need a safe place for people to camp, and we should explore every opportunity to get people into housing, to safe housing. And I'm willing to explore whatever opportunities are out there with anybody that's interested. You know, to encourage housing, I think the current city council has done a lot to make it, my understanding is to make it easier to do things like mother-in-law units, and those are really important opportunities to increase housing for people. But I think I hear a lot about the permit process. You know, how do we, and that's, I think, an issue within the county and within the city. Permitting is onerous, expensive, and sometimes it takes a long time. So how do we do that? I'd like to see the city council work with city staff to figure out a way to streamline the permit process so that someone wanting to build maybe there's, dilapidated house they want to tear down and put in multifamily dwellings. We should help that person do that and figure out a way to really speed up the process so that it's not so much trouble and so costly too. I mean, permit process is always expensive, trying to cover the cost of the review and all that. But yeah, we need to do that. We need to do infill development. We don't have big areas like Southern California or something to build, huge subdivisions. We just don't have it. County has it. There's some opportunities on the fringes to do that, but infill where we can would be the way to do it. Multifamily. People seem to not be wanting as big of houses. I think there's opportunities on city property to build housing. And my thought is, I keep saying build up, not out. Build up like businesses on the bottom, housing on top. We have opportunities to really make some nice properties, for people to live in and to work in the same place. Thank you.
I support Measure H. Firemen, 911, recreational apartments, senior services, those are the things that keep the fabric and the social contract of our society together. And as a business, as a citizen, those are the things that we need to do. So bottom line, I support Measure H. I very much like it that if you read the small writing, is that it's supported by a civilian oversight. And I think that's very important because people that are in the front line, I'm a business, I'm in the front line, they're looking, you can have that realistic feeling of what monies are well spent. So very much for that. And having been in other committees, I know that process. I've been on the civil grand jury. I know that process works. And paying taxes is something that businesses do. I understand that Amazon and Soros don't pay taxes, but in order to support our community, we need to pay some stuff. And that's why we really appreciate when people shop locally, because we need to support that community. And we love that message and we want to make a better community. Very, very important. Cutting, and if it doesn't pass, which I hope very much it does pass, that is a very complicated matter. I'm a statistics person. I would look at the number. I would make sure I'd have a consensus. I would make sure that the decision that came up to the process of what would be cut or maybe not funded as much would be very transparent and consensus. And I really couldn't tell you at this moment. I'm not going to make things up. I wouldn't know exactly what I would cut. But they would depend very much on how people are feeling, what's making the best effort, and how we're doing that. And so thank you very much for that question. So owning a business in Old Town, on the front line of that, and the fact is that homelessness and the plight of all the things that brings does affect people. I have customers, and then just the other day, two ladies that work at banks saying, I don't feel comfortable, and that's heartbreaking for a business downtown. And so there are a lot of things that can be done to help. And so, what are some of the solutions that we can come up? I very much like the program where homeless people get to put their stuff somewhere safe, so when they're walking around, they're not chugging along all the stuff that they have. That's very, very important. And homeless people are human, so we need to treat them well, and so we need to have the programs to support them. But it's a complicated thing, and we need a dynamic system in order to help them. And so I support like the Eureka Veterans Village. Being a veteran myself, I think that's a very good program. I like what the California Department of Corrections rehabilitated, that whole area. I think they're coming up with some interesting thing. I love the Redwood Community Action Agency, Betty Chin. There's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of good work, and I would support them. So that is my answer. So, like anybody, I support. I prioritize, or I very much in favor of infilling. I think that's a good strategy. I feel that we need to be careful because the war on poverty and a lot of housing had been done before. And correct me if I'm wrong here, in the '60s and that whole issue. And then a lot of those projects were destroyed, literally blown up in the '80s. So we need to look at history when we talk about housing and what kind of housing. So the housing priority, I think our biggest export here in Eureka are young people. And so if we made accessible housing for that group, I think that group is really important because they're going to create jobs and they will be spending money, and that will make a better economy, which will help us fight the fight when it comes to the homelessness and how we deal with that. So the next thing is, I always talk about that homeless people are human beings and we need to treat them such. There's a lot of programs with housing that would help homeless people get into to different housing so they don't suffer all the public health issues that they have and that we all have. And so that would make that better. So to answer the question, I think I would go that entry level for young people would be that's where I really push. And what you can do at the city council level is make sure that the licensing process and that is streamlined, because I know as a business person, we like stability, clarity, and reassurance of, hey, we're doing the right thing. And if those things come together, then we can do good business and we can help move things forward. And that answers the question. So thank you very much for the question.
Yes, I support Measure H. Currently, the City of Eureka's sales tax is 8.5%. Unfortunately, this December 31st, they're losing a 0.5% as it sunsets, bringing it down to 8%. If Measure H passes, then we're going to go up to 9.25%. Basically, I've been told by the interim city manager and the finance director, if it does not pass, they're looking at Armageddon, 20% cuts across the city budget, police, fire, roads, sewers, parks. It's going to get ugly. So what I tell everyone, for a few extra pennies when you go buy things, and by the way, food and pharmaceuticals are excluded. So the few extra pennies we're going to be spending are going to keep our roads filled, our police and fire fully staffed, and make sure our parks get the lawns mowed, and whatever we need maintenance out there is going to get done. So yes, I support it. If it doesn't pass, like I said, they're looking literally a 20% cut across the board. The police chief said he's going to go bare bones. Fire's going bare bones. Parks probably won't get the lawns mowed. Forget your pothole getting filled. So if you don't want to pay the extra tax, you can't complain when the city can't provide the services. So yes, please vote yes on Measure H. Thank you. Well, I'm very proud to say that the current Humboldt Inn, the old budget motel on 4th Street, I was instrumental in getting that thing done. After the city went and basically condemned the hotel, evicted all the residents, some friends of mine who are local businessmen in town purchased it. They thought they're going to get a quote of X from a local contractor, but when the contractor's bid came in writing, it was more than double that price. So they just dropped the project, and it sat fallow for a year and a half, creating graffiti, weeds, drug vagrants moving in and out. The city boarded everything up and was getting angry at the investors. Investors getting angry at the city. So finally, I sat down with the department head and one of the investors says, how do we make this thing work? And the city really wanted him to have a general contractor. So I said, hey, I'm in Rotary Club. So I reached out to a friend of mine in Rotary. He gave him a bid that was acceptable. And now the Humboldt Inn has been converted. What formerly was an eyesore in our town is now 44 units. And the St. Joe's Healthcare recently came in as leased it out for homeless housing. Now, regardless of how you feel about homeless, I'd rather have them in a place where they could sleep in a bed at night and have a bathroom to use versus use our city for their bed and the city for the bathroom. So yes, I support homeless alternative housing, anything that can help there. Danco's got 80 units coming online for homeless families in Samoa, which should be online any week now. Regarding harm reduction, yes, I support harm reduction. I've spoken to the new executive director of Hatcher, and she assures me they're bringing in more security there around the building site. They also have a one-for-one needle exchange. Not everyone knows that. So to get a needle, you have to bring in one of your used needles. And they will also go out to your business to do any cleanup. So if you call in as a business member and say, hey, there's some needles here outside my building, Hatch will send people over and pick them up for you. Although you may not like harm reduction, it saves lives and saves money. Okay, that's an easy answer for me. Right now, the largest owner of vacant lots in the city of Eureka is the city of Eureka. If you drive through downtown and Old Town, they probably have 20 to 30 different lots down there. Some of these are parking lots that are heavily utilized. Some of these are parking lots that are not heavily utilized. I'm proposing we take our parking lots that are not heavily utilized, lease them to a developer for $1 a year and build apartments. It doesn't have to be low-income housing because that's a whole different ballgame, but just get more housing units in there. We desperately need more housing, so let's build apartments in summer vacant lots. The other thing I'd like to see is the foot of C Street next to Jack's Restaurant. That was supposed to have been developed 15 years ago for restaurants, retail, and housing up top. 15 years later, it's still dirt. I think we can do better. We need to release what we call requests for proposals. Let's bring in ideas, run them by design review committee, and then get them from the city council, and let's start building some more housing in this town.
As a business person and a local person, I don't like taxes, of course, but without them, the city cannot operate. And I wish that the measure had a sunset clause on it, but I know that we're going to need the taxes. I hate to pay it, but I think we need it. We have no idea what's going to happen as far as income because of the virus and losing businesses and jobs and stuff. So yes, I feel we need the measure H. As far as what I would fund, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those, you look at the budget and you see what has to be done with the money. And I don't think there's going to be enough to go around even with the tax increase. So you would have to work with the different departments and say, what can you do? Here's where we need to cut. What can you cut and try to do the best for everybody. I don't want anybody to lose their jobs because we need them all. We don't have enough people out working now. So try to keep it to a minimum and put the money where we get the most bang for the buck is all I can do. We need to do something because tourism is a very large part of our income up here. Being a business owner, I saw it, and without the people not coming up, it hurt quite a bit. Needle exchange program, you know, as much as I'm against drugs, we need to help these people. And there has to be a solution. Now, I know that what was going on before, I don't think was working. I don't think that it was being supervised properly and done what it needs to do, but I know that we need to do something. If we do need to do needle exchange or whatever to help, I think it needs to be more supervised and maybe taken. I heard that they were talking about a mobile unit that would go down exactly where they were to maybe meet with them and be a little bit more one-on-one. Reentry housing, I know that we have a detox center, and then we have another unit, I think it's Apex or something like that, that does a great job. And I know that Betty Chin is doing a wonderful job. I think that helping her and supporting her would be to our advantage to help get these people in. I know that she doesn't just throw money away. She gets some training and counseling and helps take care of them. And I know she's trying to get the trailers down there by the sewer plant, and hopefully that'll come to fruit and get these people off the street. So I would think that that would be a very good solution. I would be very open to whatever is necessary because we got to help the people. As I look around and see the expensive costs of homes, I know that getting lower end housing and low cost housing is going to be a major problem. People come up here with the $1 million they sold their house for, buy a home here and overpay for it. So it raises the house prices and it raises the rent prices. Working with private contractors, I think would be difficult because of the fact that they make a profit and that raises the cost of homes. I know that the county is looking at maybe doing some of their own building on some of their lands, and we could maybe look at some of that also. I know of a few parcels out in the community area where we could do some kind of, we do the prep work on the ground and stuff, and then put some of these modular homes or things like that in there and make it affordable. And if we had to, maybe rezone that lot or something for multiple housing, so they can not only own the home, but the land itself, which makes it a better investment, and it makes them homeowners. It pays us taxes, and it makes them feel better, and then they can use that as a starter home. I'm not talking big homes, but a starter home to move on to something else, and then somebody else can come in behind them. And I think the city needs to look into helping, either working in conjunction with the county or whatever, look for grants or whatever, to maybe build some of our own housing and sell them. I mean, not just keep them, but sell them. So.
Yes, I do support extending the sales tax that was passed under Measure Q and bumping it up to the 1.25%. There are a few reasons for this, but primarily as the county seat and a center of commerce, we have so many people who pass through Eureka to work or to do business who don't live here. And this is a way for them to contribute to the Eureka community and to help maintain that infrastructure that they are using every day. I think we really need this money for our infrastructure. This represents $9.6 million a year that can be used to fund street repair and road safety and to promote local businesses and support jobs. If this passes, although it does represent a higher tax, I think that it will actually help our local businesses by creating an environment that is more pleasant to come to shop in, and also by supporting the development of new businesses that can fill some of our vacant storefronts. Finally, this money would also be put towards debt reduction, and I do think that fiscal responsibility is very important, whether you're running a business or managing a city. If this doesn't pass, we're going to have to make some pretty significant cuts. Unfortunately, law enforcement does represent the biggest portion of our budget, and I don't see a way around cutting into that. And I'm not talking about real allocation of funds in this case, I'm talking about straight cuts. Other areas we might need to cut would be things like outside attorneys, consultants, and other services. I'd like to see us avoid that. So I think when we're talking about houselessness, we need to consider the whole person within their social context. So we need to look at what factors drove them to homelessness and what factors are keeping them there. I agree that having houseless people on the streets and in our public space isn't the best for business and tourism. I think that in Eureka, we sometimes have a bad reputation in this regard, and I'd like to see us change that and tell a different story about Eureka, about our business community, about what's possible here. In order to do that, we're going to need things like transitional housing with low barriers to entry that are going to get people off the street. I've been encouraged recently to see some proposals to convert existing structures like the Pine Motel and the Eureka Inn into transitional housing places for homeless individuals to go. We're also going to need substance treatment and mental health care. These are huge factors that drive people to homelessness and keep them there. Finally, with regards to the needle exchange, I do support harm reduction. I believe that it's the compassionate approach. I think that having people suffering from blood-borne pathogens, possibly in a state of very poor health or even dying in the streets, is terrible for business. And it's terrible for the mental health of everyone else who has to see that. So yes, we need compassionate solutions. Perhaps that means that the needle exchange needs to be located somewhere else where it isn't in such close proximity to residential areas and our commercial main street. But I think that solutions for that can be identified. I think that our housing shortage is primarily a shortage of affordable housing, housing that's going to be accessible to young people, to seniors on a fixed income, to somebody who is working a minimum wage job. So when we're building housing, we need to focus on affordable housing. To do this, we need to leverage all possible funding sources, including grant funding, state funding, possibly even, some kind of funding similar to the CARES Act if there's more federal funding that becomes available. I think that when people are not working every hour that they're awake to afford rent, they actually have money to go out and spend at local businesses. And so I would like to see the people who live here in Eureka have more expendable funding to go out and support all of our wonderful local businesses. In developing housing, we should prioritize infill development in empty lots, possibly empty parking lots, really the remaining developable areas that we have that are not environmentally sensitive. We can also look into converting existing structures to housing, structures that are vacant or are not being fully used. Perhaps there is an opportunity to develop some housing units there. Our recent changes to our zoning code made good strides to encourage the development of accessory dwelling units and detached bedrooms. Things like this would increase density and offer a relatively affordable housing option for folks. And then finally, I think we should look into cooperative housing models. Cooperation Humboldt is a local organization that is doing this right now and considering development of an eco-village. I think that's an opportunity for us here.